Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Ganatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshundritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Trayamupakadamayam Dadati Svaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Upam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Krishna Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpata Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Hare Krishna, today is June 20th, 2020, and it's the anniversary of the disappearance day of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. My understanding it's the 106th anniversary. He disappeared in June 1914. And Malini led a presentation and discussion this morning with Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and that he's our great spiritual master, a guru, in the chain of disciplic succession. And so, with all of the previous acharya, Purva acharya, look, we can see the English word previous in the Sanskrit Purva, previous acharya. With all the previous acharyas, the process is that we know the previous acharyas and we know Krishna himself and Lord Chaitanya and Srimati Radharani through our current direct link to the Parampara, Srila Prabhupada. And the examples given, Prabhupada gives a few examples, but one is just like if I'm reading a book and I could say, these glasses are in the way. I want a direct relationship with the book. And it's like it's all blurry, I can hardly see anything. So in a sense, these glasses are in the way, I mean, physically, but actually the glasses, because they're finely crafted, they actually enhance my direct relationship with the book, with the print. Same analogy in a more expanded form is a telescope. I can say, I want a direct relationship between my eyes and the stars. And not much, but if we look through a telescope, we could say, all these lenses are in the way. But actually, the more finely crafted lenses between my eye and the star, the closer, the more direct is my relationship with the star. Achinti Veda Tattva, that's an apparent irony there. And so our relationship with Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Krishna and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta is, well, at least I can speak for myself, is through Srila Prabhupada. At the same time, it's not that, so we don't have a direct relation. No, we do have a direct relationship. Just like I chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra through my direct and current link to the Parampara Srila Prabhupada. And so my relationship with Krishna, Srimati Radharani, and the Hare Krishna mantra is through Srila Prabhupada. And through Srila Prabhupada, we have a direct relationship. So like it's not wrong to directly, Krishna, please engage me in your service. In the context of, I'm approaching you through my direct and current link to the Parampara Srila Prabhupada. And yes, so that's direct and indirect. This is Prabhupada calls it. It's the mystery of the disciplic succession. The mystery of the disciplic succession. So, so generally speaking, yeah. So, and that's why, like, yeah, we know Bhaktivinoda Thakur, we know Narahari Sarkar, Jiva Goswami, through Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada gave us everything we need from the teachings and the life examples of the previous acharyas. Okay. And then on these, like these special days, disappearance day, appearance day of a previous acharya, like that. On these special days, these can be special days where we emphasize the directness of the relationship, where we emphasize the direct, and we might spend extra time reading the translations and singing the bhajans of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, like that. Or reading from the Brahma Samhita, from Bhaktisiddhanta, when Bhaktisiddhanta's appearance or disappearance day, like that. Okay, so in that spirit, and with Bhaktivinoda Thakur, because he was an inconceivably expert time and circumstance preacher, and so if we do read directly from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, it's really important to keep in mind whatever he's sharing is transcendental, and he's not like, we're not really his audience. And so again, we get what we need from Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada is perfectly channeling Bhaktivinoda Thakur according to time, circumstance, and person. We are the persons. Okay, so in that spirit, I thought to read a few excerpts. This is a book. It's entitled Hindu Encounter with Modernity, and subtitle Kedranath Bhaktivinoda Vaishnav Theologian. It's by Shukavak N. Das, forward by Thomas J. Hopkins. And it's a biography of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It's a biography of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And something especially appealing is that it has dozens, maybe well over 100 direct quotes from the writing of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Some just a few sentences, and then some, there's a 25-page speech that Bhaktivinoda Thakur at some British society in India, he gave a speech, and this is his personal transcript of the speech. And so I don't expect we'll read that, but there's a lot of nectar here that not available anywhere else, at least in the published book. So again, we rarely read directly from Bhaktivinoda, and so today is like a special day. And so I thought we could just enter into it. And there's writings from Bhaktivinoda. He's, as you mentioned this morning, Malini, he's prolific writer. Prolific doesn't quite describe it. In different languages, and just from the time he's literally 11 years old, he's writing this profound literature and poetry and epics, starting from pre-adolescence. I think what I'm doing in pre-adolescence. Anyhow, so he's a special personality. And then all through his life, through 1914, he's writing prolifically. And then so in this book, there's excerpts on his writings about his grandfather, about his school days, There's writings about how he was a superstar student, but then and he was like he got special awards from the king of whatever province they're in. Yeah, he got special awards, and then he writes, and I let it get to my head, and I became so proud, but then I became useless. So there's a lot of introspection, and there's extensive writings in here from Bhaktivinoda on the social political issues of the day, including racism and sexism. He talks a lot about racism and sexism, and
Isn't this picture?
what this is Bhaktivinoda picture.
Is it a picture or is it a drawing?
This is a photo. This is a photo. Yeah. There's lots of photos in here.
It just looks so manly there. It's like a king.
Like a king.
Emperor,
Very,
yeah.
very majestic, royal.
Yeah.
And there's extensive writings on the philosophy, including basics of sadhana and basics of what is the Atma, and philosophy into very, very esoteric aspects. He wrote extensively about everything. All right, well, you mentioned picture. Okay. Many pictures in the book. Let's see, we can maybe just, so this is first I'll show it to the internet group. This is Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur with, actually it's his second wife, Bhagavati, and 10 children. Okay, Bhaktivinoda Thakur with Bhagavati and 10 children. Okay, and Bimala Prasad, who became Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he's there in the upper left corner. He looks completely not of this world. This completely not of this world. So anyhow, here's a picture. In this book, actually, on page, I made a note. On page 300, there's a list of Bhaktivinoda's 14 children. My understanding is he had one with his first wife, who passed away at an early age, and then 13 with Bhagavati. 8 boys, 6 girls. I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure not all of them survived into adulthood, but a list of 14 children. And so it's got, this is a biography of Bhaktivinoda. It's got some of, because he was a judge, he was a magistrate in Jagannath Puri. And so it's a list of his different work records and work schedules and different cases. And it's like, yeah, it's a nice scholarly collection. Let's see, what do we have here? Here is, in their later years, this is Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhagavati, with Bhagavati holding a bead bag. That's his wife, with whom he had 13 children, including Srila Bhaktisiddhanta.
She's holding, did you say?
She's holding a bead
A
bag.
bead bag, yeah. She seems to have been really like on board with serious sadhana.
Completely. Yes, she does seem. And this looks like the cover picture, but the full picture with Bhaktivinoda in his white beard and
Really like a Vaita Chaya.
yeah, he'd like a Vaita chanting japa. Okay. So we're doing some pictures before we get to.
Why do they have a beard? Beards are mochi.
Yeah, well, there's different. I mean, that's one aspect. That's one principle. He was in a Babaji phase. He was in a Babaji phase in his very late years. Because okay, when we talk about Bhaktivinoda Thakur, one of the things is like he was so much in the world, and he had 13 children, 14, 14, and he was British magistrate, and he was all about do Krishna consciousness in your home, this whole kind of home program.
Like what we are doing.
Like what we're doing. This is from Bhaktivinoda. He called it Namhat, the marketplace of holiness. So he was so much, and he managed so many things, and money and people. At the same time, at the very end, he did take a form of sannyas. He did take a form of Babaji. And then for that ashram, we have like Jagannath Das Babaji or Kishore Das Babaji. Then for that ashram, a different appearance is often.
It seems that it's not so much about appearance, that it is about less time and energy spent in maintaining the body.
Yeah.
And it takes time to share.
Nice.
And then in Babaji, you don't take time for that.
Yeah.
You take time for bhajan.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that they're unclean, but yeah, it's like the different balance of principles.
There's a picture of Bhaktisiddhanta with the beard. I think that was during Chaturmasya, so maybe it's something similar.
Could be something similar there. Yes. Very nice. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And this is Bhaktivinoda. His birth name is Kedranath Dutt. This is his maternal home in Birnagar, West Bengal. It looks quite affluent, quite palatial. This is his maternal home.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's not.
Like 41st Street.
It's no cheap shack or something.
Yeah.
And okay, here's an assembly of court magistrates, 1890, and Kedranath Dutt Bhaktivinoda is seated in the middle. He looks a little bit like a Lubavitcher rabbi there, in my opinion. Well, he does. I'm not just trying to be funny. He's got the hat. With the, yeah. Yeah. Okay. It's a photo of magistrate, not 1890. Great British magistrate. Yeah. So basically Bhaktivinoda, he grew up in a like Hindu household, not Vaishnava, like Kali worshipping Hindu. And he was very educated by the British. He received a very strong British education, and and then he started having tragedy at 11. His mother, his mother died, and his first wife died. He had siblings who died from cholera, pandemic, or maybe at least epidemic, and he himself struggled with physical sickness, not material, throughout his life. Yeah, and then he was just like this brilliant young Indian in the British system, trained by the British, and he went in his early phases. He talks about him and his friends. They formed clubs, and they were into different Upanishads and things. Mostly, they were into Western philosophy. They were into Darwin and Comte and like that. And Bhagavatam was like, they were not into Bhagavatam. They were not into the Vaishnava. This was seen as he describes himself. And then he somehow found, or it found him, a copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita. And then that was a major transformation. Because as you were describing this morning, so much going on in the name of Vaishnavism, they wanted nothing, the intellectuals wanted nothing, it was not respectable. But then he was getting the real thing. And you could see Lord Chaitanya was dedicated to Bhagavatam. Maybe I should take a look at this Bhagavatam. He shared this morning that it was difficult to get, but he got a copy. So he went through a transformation. And let's see, maybe there's one more picture, then we'll read some things directly from Bhaktivinoda. This is 1914. This is the year that he passed away, 1914, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. See, he's not having a beard there. This is the year he passed away.
In the biography I was reading, they said like a few years before he passed away, he completely retired to just chant and be alone, and under the pretext of being paralyzed. So to the world, he said, I'm paralyzed, and physically he was not doing well, and probably it's true too.
Yeah.
And then he completely retired, and Babaji just chanted.
Yeah, thanks for that. So I just listed maybe 80 or 90 sections we could read.
Oh, great.
Yeah, go till 2 a.m. I'll be happy.
Yeah.
But maybe we'll just choose a few. Choose a few.
Oh God, it's here tomorrow.
Exactly. No, this is
Very popularity, yes.
and this is what the festivals are for. All right. So this is from a book he wrote called The Bhagavad, Its Philosophy, Ethics, and Theology. You must yourself knock at the door of the inexhaustible store of truth from which the former ages drew their wealth. Go up to the fountainhead of truth, where no pilgrim meets with disappointment of any kind. Vyasa did it and obtained what he wanted. We have been advised to do so. Liberty then is the principle which we must consider as the most valuable gift of God. We must not allow ourselves to be led by those who lived and thought before us. We must think for ourselves and try to get further truths which are still undiscovered. In the Bhagavad, we have been advised to take the spirit of the Shastras and not the words. The Bhagavad is, therefore, a religion of liberty, unmixed truth, and absolute love. Oh, it's special. He's emphasizing what I'll call the independently thoughtful principle. Prabhupada emphasized, although it's often not emphasized. But Prabhupada emphasized he wants all his followers to be independently thoughtful and not to blindly follow. And because Prabhupada just witnessed a lot of in the name of, I was just following authority, he witnessed a lot of stupidity actually. So he was really emphasizing that point. So this is coming here. Okay, so there's just probably well over 100 directly beautiful expressions from Bhaktivinoda through his writings. Okay, here's one from, I think it's called Jivani, it's one of his books. So Bhaktivinoda writes, he's talking about his maternal grandfather. As Birnagar was famous within Bengal as a wealthy village, so my maternal grandfather, Sri Ishvara Chandra Mustaupi, was famous as a prosperous landowner. His wealth and liberal disposition were known throughout the region, and people used to come from all over the countryside to see his famous palace. If anyone was in need, they could go to the home of Mustaupi Mashashai and get whatever they needed without any difficulty. When I was almost 2 years old, my father returned from Orissa. My nurse said that a few days before my father's return, I saw a crow flying and recited this nursery rhyme. "O crow, caw, caw, if my father is coming, show a sign, move aside on your perch." As I spoke, the crow moved on his perch. Some people nearby saw this and said, "Oh, Kater, your father must certainly be coming soon." It so happened that in a few days, my father arrived in Ula. Just again, there wasn't like chat or email, like they didn't have telephones like that. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur continues. In my grandfather's home, all kinds of festive occasions were celebrated. Jagadatri Puja was celebrated with much fanfare. I remember it well. During the night, hundreds of chandeliers hung in rows by the lot outside the puja building. The door guards dressed themselves in sepoy uniforms. From Ranagat and Shantipur, great crowds of stout men adorned in golden clothes would come. They were accompanied by bodyguards and soldiers. It was like a forest of people, and with all the lights, it looked like Kurukshetra. The festival was celebrated with fireworks and rowdy pomp. The guests would become so overwhelmed with the fun that they would lose all sight of the religious occasion. Late at night, Kavi Gana, song tournaments, would begin and last until dawn. They would have competitions of song. I used to stay up and listen and laugh at the fun. The gods and goddesses were all dressed in their finest splendor, and the meal arrangements were the best. On this occasion, many goats and buffalo were sacrificed and eaten. In those days, the ladies would worship the goddess Durga, carrying pots of incense on their heads. Everybody used to enjoy this occasion, except, of course, the goats and buffalo.
Is it actually written down?
Oh, yeah, I'm not making this stuff up. That's why I said, like, you know, we need to, like, understand things in context. Yeah, so, like, Haridas Thakur grew up in a Muslim family. But it was a meat-eating, fish-eating Hindu family. He did not grow up in a Vaishnava family. And he had a transformation as his life went on. He continues, on Doli Yatra, there would be singing and all kinds of fun. Red dye was thrown everywhere. At this time, even the guards took part in the festival. They would enter the temple courtyard singing and throwing dye. With all this commotion, I would hide and watch from a distance. During the festival, I especially enjoyed watching the bonfires. These schools were housed in shabby straw-built structures or held in open air under shady trees and run by teachers who were little respected and poorly rewarded. Discipline was enforced in these institutions in a rough and ready manner by the lusty exercise of the cane, as well as numerous forms of sadistic infliction. He's talking about his school days. Yes.
British education.
Yes. Yes. He goes on. I was 11 years old when my father passed away, and I was forced to become independent. I constantly worried, what would become of me? I saw only darkness. There were no blood relatives to look after me. I was helpless and gradually sinking lower. At school, I became listless. I would even take castor oil in order to avoid attendance. Repeatedly, my old fever returned. The only redeeming feature of this period was that I avoided bad company. I thought many things over and tried to put my thoughts into poetry. At this time, I wrote the Ulachandi Mahatmya, which is now unfortunately lost. Yes, that's it. And I thought I'll go to just a different flavor of writings. So this is
Hear such a personal, like hear his own voice in such a personal, non-philosophical.
Yeah.
Because all you try is very like spiritual, philosophical. This is just like biography.
It's biography.
Cool.
It's personal. Yeah.
He wrote an autobiography.
He
One
did.
of his sons asked him to write an autobiography.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Bhaktivinoda. So this is a chapter entitled Systematic Theology. So Bhaktivinoda writes, he is the best critic who can show the further development of an old idea. But a mere denouncer is the enemy of progress and consequently of nature. Begin anew, says the critic, because the old masonry does not answer at present. Let the old author be buried because his time is gone. These are shallow expressions. These are shallow expressions. Progress certainly is the law of nature, and there must be corrections and developments with the progress of time. But progress means going further or rising higher. The true critic advises us to preserve what we have already obtained and to adjust our race from that point where we have arrived in the heat of our progress. He will never advise us to go back to the point whence we started. Again, that's from the book, The Bhagavad, it's philosophy, ethics, and theology.
Could you paraphrase what you understand? I feel lost in understanding anything. Not anything, but
Okay. Yeah, so my understanding that so about someone who's like what is it, like there's a saying, a cynic like a cynic doesn't know the value of anything. It's someone who's just criticizing. And and he's saying like, so a helpful critique, a helpful critic, and we can appreciate what we've gotten from the past, and according to time and circumstance, take the principles, and we can build on that. We can build on that. It's very progressive thought, very, very progressive thought. That's what I'm understanding. That's what I'm understanding there. Okay. Let's see here. So he writes. Oh, here's one. This is not from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. This is a letter from Ralph Waldo Emerson, written to Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
Wow.
Yeah. Ralph Waldo Emerson was, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he sent his books everywhere. And he sent one to he's called an American Transcendentalist, Emerson Thoreau. So Ralph Waldo Emerson writes, "Dear Sir, I have received with pleasure the book you so kindly sent me. I am sorry that I do not know the language and cannot read it, and can only send my thanks."
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet, yeah. Yes. So, but in I think it's called Krishna Samhita, Bhaktivinoda writes, "Through the mercy of God, it is hoped that the Europeans and Americans will soon experience the wine of Madhurya Ras.
Whoa,
Wow.
wonderful.
They have seen that whatever Ras develops in India eventually spreads to the West, and there is no doubt that the Madhurya Ras is long overdue in the West." That's interesting because he's writing.
We have his blessing.
What's that?
We have his blessing.
We have his blessing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting because this is 1800s, and he's saying the Western scholars and intellectuals, they're already seeing that whatever rasa develops in India eventually spreads to the West, because people like Emerson and Thoreau, they were already appreciating the Gita and the Upanishads like that. So Madhurya Rasa is long overdue in the West. As the sun first rises in India and then gradually spreads its light west, so the unparalleled beams of spiritual truth rise first in India and then spread to the West. And now he's talking about his book in English, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, His Life and Precepts. "The object of this little book is to bring the holy life of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his precepts to the notice of the educated and the religious people. Most of the books treating these subjects have hitherto been printed in Bengali characters. Hence, the life and precepts of Chaitanya have scarcely passed beyond the boundaries of Bengal. This book has therefore been printed in Sanskrit type for circulation all over India. Our educated brethren of Europe and America have taken of late to the study of the Sanskrit language, and it is our belief that this brochure will go to their hands in a very short time. With a view to help our English-knowing readers in going through the book, we have here summarized in English the contents of the work." Yes. And so he continues to write. "Gradually I recovered from my head ailment and I was able to resume my studies. In the association of so many bhaktas, I was becoming more renounced, and so I began to think, I am wasting my life and I have accomplished nothing because I've been unable to obtain even a small taste of service to Sri Radha Krishna. So while I am still able, let me retire from government work, draw my pension, and find some place on the banks of the Yamuna near Vrindavan or Mathura to perform bhajan in peace."
Is that what we did?
It is what he did. After being productive in so many fields, and then, he became a Babaji in the later stages.
Yeah, because what I understand is that at 56 he kind of retired from his. But then he wanted to go to Vrindavan, and that's when Lord Chaitanya came to speak with him. He said, "No, go to Navadvip."
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he got really involved for so many years again until he was in his 70s.
Yeah, and of course, also in his later years, he was just spreading love of Krishna all over the world. There were gatherings where all four were present in person. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, Kishore Das Babaji, and Jagannath Das Babaji. Because Jagannath Das Babaji lived to like 120 or 5 or something. So there were times in the early 1900s, late 1800s, where all four were present.
Wow, discussing Shastra together.
Like
Wow.
almost like the Panchatattva.
Yeah.
So Bhaktivinoda, he started this Namhat program, which is like, and we might take it for granted, but of course I was also Lord Chaitanya's program, Kirtans in the house of Srivas Thakur and like that. And then Lord Chaitanya's followers, there was a lot of focus on establishing temples. The 6 Goswamis established a lot of temples. So both approaches are very, very much our line. Home programs in the street and constructing grand temples. It's all part of our line, and like that. And so here, this is a typical, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he had a newsletter, Sajjana Toshini. So this is a typical Namhat report. It was a monthly report, okay? So he writes, on Saturday afternoon of the 26th of Asad, 1892, a Namhat festival was hosted by Shriyuta Rai Yatindranath Chaudhary Mashashai of Barshanagar. Many learned and inquisitive gentlemen were in attendance. At the request of the organizers of the Namhat, everyone took turns singing. Afterwards, the sweeper of the market, Shriyuta Kedranath Bhaktivinoda, he has this whole kind of society defined, and his position in society is he's the street sweeper. He's the street sweeper, which means like he's responsible. Keep this clean. Keep this clean. And that because there was so much, and that's why him and the other young intellectuals, of course, by this time he's elderly, but they wanted nothing. Vaishnavism was seen as very unclean. And then he got the real thing, and so he established Namhat, and he's the street sweeper. At the request of the organizers of the Namhat, everyone took turns singing. Afterwards, the sweeper of the market, Shriyuta Kedranath Bhaktivinoda, gave a long discourse entitled Mahashaya Sri Krishna and Sri Krishna Chaitanya that lasted over 3 hours. Afterwards, the Mahajani, Shriyuta Advaitadas Babaji Mahashai, sang 2 songs ending with Haribol.
Haribol.
At the conclusion, all the assembled guests gave a great cry of Hari, and the meeting ended. You can see he's keeping a journal. That's just one day, one program. He's keeping a journal. Special. Okay. Okay. So here's an excerpt that he writes about sadhana. Okay, we're jumping into different flavors. So this is from the Bhagavad, its philosophy, ethics, and theology. And he writes, the Bhagavad does not allow its followers to ask anything from God except eternal love towards him. The kingdom of the world, the beauties of the local heavens, and the sovereignty over the material world are never the subjects of Vaishnava prayer. The Vaishnava meekly and humbly says, Father, Master, God, friend, and husband of my soul, I have called you my God. Let my soul be wrapped up in admiration at your greatness. I have addressed you as my master. Let my soul be strongly devoted to your service. I have called you my friend. Let my soul be in reverential love towards you and not in dread or fear. I have called you my husband. Let my spiritual nature be in eternal union with you, forever loving and never dreading or feeling disgust. Father, Father, let me have strength enough to go up to you as the consort of my soul so that we may be one in eternal love. He continues. After coming to the civilized state, the soul cultivates various kinds of learning that often cover its natural faith with impure reasoning. This gives way to the state of atheism or the doctrine of nirvana, which is a kind of non-difference doctrine. But we should realize that such ugly beliefs are the symptoms of an unhealthy condition of immature consciousness. In human life, there are 3 intermediate stages between the base uncivilized stage and the beautiful stage of full faith in God. These stages are categorized as atheism, materialism, and agnosticism, or the nirvana doctrine, which are diseases that block the soul's development and so lead one to assume some very low positions. So again, he's speaking, of course, philosophy, and he's speaking from experience, because he's talking about, okay, like there's like the primitives who would worship a totem pole or just worship, the idea of a personal God, the old man with a beard. And see, in his youth, that was the idea, like Krishna playing the flute. This is for old women and children. That would be the conception. Yeah, yes, and exactly. So then him and his young intellectual friends, they rejected that because they were above that. And now, later, after his transformation, he's saying, okay, so now they've come to a civilized place. They're no longer, it's not just this kind of like primitive idol worship, civilized intellectual. And then that leads to different learning that often covers the soul's natural faith with impure reasoning. And so he has songs where he talks about how material education, it just is like a slaughterhouse for the soul. Like that. He's speaking from experience. He was highly educated in that. Yes. So Bhaktivinoda, he writes, okay, so yes. So that's the thing, because they rejected the idea of morty and deity in his youth, in his intellectual youth. So he writes very powerfully about realizing God and the deity. He writes very powerfully about that to defeat the arguments that he used to make. True. Okay, so he writes, the writer of the biography writes, faced with the challenge of explaining the rationale behind Sri Morti to the Bajraloka, Bhaktivinoda writes, the Bajraloka, that's the group of British educated Indian intellectuals. He was a Bajraloka. Okay. Scriptural evidence for Sri Morti is well known. Therefore, only rational evidence will be shown here. The Supreme Lord does not have a material form, but is endowed with a transcendent spiritual form called Satchidananda Vigraha. The fullest manifestation of this transcendent form cannot be perceived by the conditioned jivas. For this reason, in whatever fashion man conceives of God in this world, his conception must always assume a degree of idolatry. In language, idolatry may be theoretically avoided, but not in practical worship. The supreme attractor, Sri Krishna, can be perceived in the heart to some extent through the help of divine love. When this form is perceived in the mind during meditation, it assumes a greater degree of phenomenality. While being served through the body and senses in physical form, Sri Morti assumes the greatest level of phenomenality. In reality, the aspirants will eventually need to acquire transcendental sentiments toward all 3 forms of Sri Morti. Sri Morti is the manifestation of God in the soul, in the mind, or in physical form. Very interesting. Even when one meditates on God in the mind, he imagines some image or idol that is composed of material qualities. To accept an earthen idol to be the divine image of God is as good as meditation on the gross material image in the heart. Therefore, however far one has advanced, it is best to conceive of God at that level. In fact, if there were no idol worship, human beings would have a great problem. When a common man becomes eager for God, he loses hope if he cannot see an image of God before him. Image worship is therefore the foundation of human religion. Everything depends on the sincerity of the heart of the one who worships. The more the heart is free from contact with matter, the more the person is able to worship the divine image of God. For an elevated person, the image is the all-conscious, transcendent form of God. For a middle person, the image is formed of the mind, and for the lower person, the image at first appears as gross matter, but when the thoughts gradually become purified, the spiritual image manifests itself. Therefore, the sacred image should be worshipped by all classes of adhikari. There's a lot of intricate philosophy there. And so he's saying, like, okay, because depending on our adhikari or level of realization or lack of it, we're not going to realize Krishna and the deity like that. But still, it's recommended. It's a very low form. In a sense, it's idol worship because we're seeing matter. It's idol worship. But then, as our realization increases, we actually, then the middle stage is we're thinking, okay, that is God, but we don't have that direct experience. And then the highest level is we're directly experiencing this is Krishna, this is the Lord Chaitanya. So he's talking about 3 levels of deity worship. And of course the deity is always completely pure, but depending on how material or spiritual our realization is, 3 levels. That's what he seems to be talking about here.
I had this talk once with a Muslim in Israel, and he was trying to refute the deity worship, that it's idol worship. So I asked him, so how do you meditate on God? And I found his answer quite interesting, because he mentioned, I see the waterfalls, or I look at the clouds or the sun, and I was kind of thinking, that's God, I guess. Like, is that what Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, that actually it's better to worship a deity, not really realizing that, than worshiping, let's say, a natural phenomena, which is...
Well, and thanks for that sharing. In that particular excerpt, I don't see him making comparison to natural phenomena. We have it's realizing God through material nature. That's so much a part of Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, like that. So, which is better? I mean, I would say, based on my understanding of Prabhupada, there's not like a this or that is better. So, what's working for us. So like walking in the park, appreciating the ocean, the sky, like that. And if that's really moving us closer to God, then that's more powerful than if we're like just dry, distracted in front of the deity because it's a ritual. What's bringing us alive in self-realization, in Krishna consciousness. So Krishna gives us all these ways. Amongst aquatics, I am the shark, and like that, and like that. So the birds are my artistic sense, and the trees are the hairs on the body of the universal form. So what's Krishna giving so many ways? So what's bringing us alive most? That's what's best. So Bhaktivinoda writes, again, in the Bhagavad, it's philosophy, ethics, and theology. He writes, when we were in college, reading the philosophical works of the West and exchanging thoughts with the thinkers of the day, we had a real hatred towards the Bhagavad.
Wow.
So He's not.
Intense.
Yeah, he's not being soft with language. That great work looked like a repository of wicked and stupid ideas, scarcely adapted to the 19th century, and we hated to hear any argument in its favor. With us, a volume of Channing, Parker, Emerson, or Newman had more weight than the whole lot of the Vaishnava works.
Wow.
Greedily, we pored over the various commentaries of the Holy Bible and of the labors of the Tattva Bodhini Sabha, containing extracts from the Upanishads and the Vedanta, but no works of the Vaishnava had any favor with us. And you can see how that experience, that was empowering for him later in life, when he was writing about the Vaishnava works and addressing the Vajraloka, the intellectuals of the day.
It seems that it's what's most exceptional about him,
Yeah.
is that he was such a free thinker, like he said.
Yeah, such a free thinker. Yeah.
He was such a free thinker and such a devotee.
Yeah.
That his devotional art led him to the orthodox path of Vaishnavism.
Yes.
Even so, he had everything against him. You know,
Yeah.
his education was against him.
Yeah.
His conditioning was against him. The time, because Vaishnavism was really degraded,
Yeah.
and everything was against it. And regardless, because he is a devotee and eternally a devotee, like he found a way. He found a way to Lord Chaitanya.
Yeah, and then
That's amazing.
so he writes. Okay. The name of Hari is not born in this material world. This is actually from, I think this is from Vijay. This is from one of his novels, and this is a character in a novel. Yeah, and he writes, the name of Hari is not born in this material world. A soul who is an infinitesimal part of the infinite is only eligible to pronounce the name of God when he lives in his own pure transcendental body. Nobody of this world who lies in the bondage of illusion is able to utter the pure name. But when the real self works through the grace of the Ladini Shakti, it is then that the real name of God appears. With the appearance of the divine name, the pure name most kindly descends on the mind of the devotee and begins to dance on his tongue, sanctified by devotion. The name is not just a combination of syllables. Only when it dances on the material tongue does it assume the shape of letters. This is the mystery of the name.
So much faith in his songs.
Yeah.
To receive the name.
What was his transformation point from his old life to Vaishnavism? What changed that led him to be open to Vaishnavism?
It's been about 20 years since I read this book, so I'm not so much in the details. But he didn't grow up with Vaishnava. At the same time, he had his maternal grandfather was a mystic, and I think one of his grandfathers, when he died, kind of said you're going to be a great Vaishnava. And he was like, what? But it was there. And then at some point, somehow, maybe in his 20s, he ran into a true version of Chaitanya Charitamrita, and he got an authorized version of Bhagavatam, and then he just had that direct experience of the experience and the philosophy. I remember one of his grandfathers, even though it was meat-eating village, one of his grandfathers was a mystic prophet, And like as he was leaving his body, it's described here.
He told him to go on pilgrimage.
Things like that, yeah. So I mean, I'm not remembering all the incidents, but ultimately it led him to Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Like I'm feeling maybe uncomfortable with calling it a transformation. You know, like my understanding in reading like the last few days, I absorb myself there, is that he has the heart of the Vaishnava, and it's so clear with all the decisions he makes.
Yeah.
He has the heart of the Vaishnava, but then he hasn't yet connected. But
Yeah.
he's looking.
Yeah.
He's looking, and when he comes in contact with Christianity,
Yeah,
that's when you
yeah.
really awaken already, because it's closer than what you have known in
the
Hinduism.
Upanishads. Yeah.
So it's not like he was transformed like from what he was to a Vaishnava. It's more like he's a Vaishnava, really deeply is a devotee, and his environment, his context is not giving him Vaishnavism. It's not giving him. It's not there. And his yearning, the yearning of his heart, like led him to, for example, become a teacher instead of a land owner, like his family, or a businessman to make money. So he's guided by his yearning for something and learning, because there is that, that desire within his heart to find something. And then little by little is guided through Christianity, in fact, to finally land on Lord Chaitanya's movement, which is amazing, because for him to land there, he needed to be so sincere, because it was so degraded that it was like nobody will go there. But because the sincerity of his heart, because he is a Vaishnava, then that was leading him to all his decision making and all his journey to finally arriving home.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, we might say that his natural, deep bhakti was revealed and manifest as different life circumstances unfolded.
Like that, yeah. And that yearning was kind of leading him like to see the world, even in his writing earlier. He was really analytical about the world, the material world, and the people and psychology and all.
Yeah, it's like
I just found it so beautiful. Like I found it so beautiful that the yearning of his heart as a Vaishnava was so strong that even everything was against it. It's just landing there.
Yeah, it's like a mission. All of that stuff was meant to be purified. Just like his existence purified all those so-called contaminations. I don't know how to explain it, but like that's, sometimes I feel like that with myself. Like there's certain impediments and certain types of thinking, like impersonalism and all this stuff, and then for me to go through my transformation, I'm transforming those connected material nature, types of consciousness in that pervading atmosphere. Does that sound? Yeah. So from him going from here to there, there's all this like collective consciousness and established systems and ways of thinking and relationships that are in between him, where he was young to be in there, and he moved through all of that and purified it all. That's the way that I like it.
Of course, this is all because he's Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He's coming from Goloka Vrindavan. So this is important. I mean, we haven't mentioned it right here today, but no, he's coming from Goloka Vrindavan on a mission. Okay, so yes. At the same time, the way his life unfolded, and let's call it the transformation of his perspective in the pastime, but it's pastime. It's pastime. So he can talk about the buffaloes and the goats and things like that, and how like they hated the Bhagavatam, like that. He's coming from Goloka Vrindavan, so let's just be clear about that. Okay, and yeah, and the way his life unfolded, it's fascinating. He in terms where he really did his work, right, on all levels. No, he had emotional hatred for all the Vaishnava Shastra. So, he really did his work. And so it's valid to say that. Sure, from another perspective, he had no work to do. He's with Krishna on the Yamuna River. But, I mean, that's one perspective. Another perspective, very human perspective, he really did his work. That's what I hear you
It's
say.
like we used to do with my father when we were young, burn the field, because it's all the old dead grass is there, and the fire just goes through it and purifies it. Yeah.
He writes, traveling from Calcutta, I heard from one man that an epidemic had killed many people in the village. People from my own home had died. When I heard this, I was shocked, and I intensified my travel home. For protection, I took a man who was skilled in stick fighting, and on the way, many people described the horrible state of the village. So he had a bodyguard who was expert in fighting. Reaching our home, I saw the main door open. I called out many times until someone answered, "Babu, come inside." By then, I could barely stand up. Running towards the puja room, I called out again, and my aunt came and brought me to my room. She was hysterical. She told me that Hemlata had died and that my mother was very sick. I entered my mother's room and found that she had been delirious with fever for a week. Mother began to cry. I said that we must leave Ula at once. During the night, I could not eat or drink, and I slept only a little. Rising in the morning, I heard that all the servants had died. On the day before we set out, I went to many places in Ula. Everywhere the houses were empty. At some homes, bodies were lying all around. At other homes, there were the cries of pain from those who were dying. Others were making preparations to leave. It was the time of the Durga Puja, but there was no happiness. The fever was terrible, and whoever got it could die within a few hours. So he had a very affluent upbringing, and he experienced the material miseries, the stark ugliness of material nature in so many ways.
When an empowered jiva comes here on a mission, do they forget that they're from Goloka Vrindavan? Like when an empowered jiva comes from Goloka Vrindavan, do they forget Yoga Maya or something?
The question from Bhaktivinoda Briel, in case not everyone heard it, when an empowered jiva comes here from Goloka Vrindavan, do they forget? So I guess the response is, ask them. I'm not going to stop there, but really, because you're talking about their personal experience, and so I don't have privy to their personal experience, like what that is. So they're completely absorbed in their service. Like Prabhupada was absorbed in his service, and then rarely we see that he's remembering, like on his poetry on the Jaladuta, he's talking about frolicking in the fields with Krishna. At the same time, he's simultaneously completely absorbed in selling the Bhagavatams. And what will I do here in Butler, Pennsylvania? So he's completely absorbed there. And whether he's like cognitively remembering Goloka, or when he's, they're never in Maya. So I can't speak for their experience. I mean, other writings here, we haven't read it, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he reveals who he is in Goloka Vrindavan. He reveals who he is, and it's included in this book, like that. Bhaktisiddhanta revealed who he is in Goloka Vrindavan, like that. So, it seems that they're never in the forgetfulness of Maya. At the same time, neither are they like in the spiritual world and they're distracted from their service here. that's never there also. Okay.
Kind of
Well,
thinking, sorry.
It seems that they are not making that separation, like spiritual or material world. So when they are, they are sent in that region of the, like the world covered by Maya, they are not covered. So they are not under the cloud with Maya.
Yeah.
But they have a special service to render. And that service, like sometimes you said, like the Kopi bath is Srila Prabhupada boarding on the Jaladuta and crossing the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah. Right.
Like that's what it is, because they are not under the cloud, and at the same time they have a mission and a relationship, a rasa with the soul, the conditioned soul, that are conditioned, and they are coming to lovingly bring them back to Krishna, because Krishna wants them, wants to love the soul.
Yeah.
So it's just like, because maybe we are imposing that distinction between material and spiritual, that we say, oh, do they think about that or that? But it seems that it's
that's our limitation.
there is a non-difference between the two. It's service to Krishna, it's pleasing to Krishna, it makes Krishna smile, and that's what the life of a devotee is to create that Krishna smile.
Yeah.
And what do I do? I pick up flower for Radharanath's hair, or do I pick up soul in the lower Manhattan, like lower East Side?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's non-different, because it's not about a form or a place. It's about a service in a relationship to Krishna.
I appreciate that perspective. I mean, it completely resonates with my understanding of the essence of Prabhupada. Because we can think, well, what do residents of Vrindavan do? Well, they dance in the forest with Krishna, and they're hearing his flute, and they're frolicking in the fields, and and also the residents of Vrindavan, they get on the Jaladuta, and also they organize Racha Yatras in places like San Francisco. That's what cowherd boys do. That's what gopis do. Because it's the essence. The essence isn't I'm enjoying. The essence is I'm inspired to bring people to Krishna.
To make Krishna enjoy.
Yeah, so it would be them forgetting would be like yoga maya.
Like yoga maya, yeah.
It wouldn't be,
If there is forgetting, it's a sort of maya that deepens their enthusiasm to serve Krishna.
Coming closer to Krishna.
Coming closer to Krishna.
And in Bhaktivinoda Thakur, like his songs, it's quite very impressive how he can go back and forth. Like some song is like really lamenting about his greed and lust and how fallen he is and what he did in his life. He's so lamenting so deeply. And then you have Jayada Madhava, where is completely absorbed in seeing Radha and Krishna and the pastime of Vrindavan, or Gaurarti, those kind of songs like Jayada Madhava or Gaurarti, where it's a full absorption, full meditation and presence with the Lord. And then you have those songs where it's just lamenting of his material conditioning, and it goes back and forth. So it's in both back and forth, like there is a constant of that deep union with Krishna through separation. The separation takes different form, but that union is just so strong, and in both those different mood of his songs.
Yeah, that one I know that when you're talking about, you're saying there's not an ounce of good quality in me. I'm wicked. I like to watch it, see other people suffering and all these stuff. But there is like a really sobering undertone to it. It's not. It doesn't feel like depression or viciousness behind it. It's just really sober. Yeah. It is really interesting.
Powerful realization of true nature, profound Vaishnava humility. And I appreciate the share because, like you mentioned, so he was prolific bhajan writer, such realizations. And Prabhupada instituted Bhaktivinoda in our daily program, right? With Jai Radha Madhava, morning program, and before any class at any time of day. And Guru Arti, these are both bhajans by Bhaktivinoda, we might not remember. So like for night's evening program, let's sing a bhajan by Bhaktivinoda, actually just Prabhupada's program, okay, before class, sing Jai Madhava Madhava, and in the evening, sing Guru Arti. This is Bhaktivinoda. So Prabhupada gave us like a heavy dose of Bhaktivinoda in the program. Okay, I'll read one more. We're approaching 8:30 Eastern time. Hello, Hari Priya, Nanda, and it looks like Patrick and Rebecca. Hare Krishna. We'll read one more. So Bhaktivinoda writes. So his grandfather's name was, I think this is paternal grandfather, Raj Ballabha. So he writes, even though my grandfather said that he would die in a few days, I did not see any signs of illness. After 3 days, he asked me to come to his bed. He had a small fever and was sitting up, chanting and smoking tobacco from his hookah.
Chanting what?
Who was that? Is that him? Bhaktivinoda Thakur?
It was his grandfather.
What chanting what, do you know?
I just said he was chanting. I don't know what he was chanting.
Okay.
And smoking tobacco from his hookah.
Hookah is like a water
The big
pipe.
huge ones.
Yeah.
Water pipe.
Yeah.
Yeah, the big huge one there.
White Rabbit, Jefferson Airplane. Good. Got someone who can connect there. All right. He had a small fever and was sitting up chanting and smoking tobacco from his hookah. He was surrounded by a dozen friends who were chatting with him. Calling me to his side, he spoke, after I am gone, do not remain in Orissa. Whatever job that you get by age 27 will be your main life's work. You are destined to become a famous Vaishnav. You have my blessings. With that, he passed away, releasing his vital breath through the top of his head, Brahmarandram. Such an amazing death is rarely seen. What's that?
What is Brahmarandram?
Oh, that's that chakra there. And that's also that because when the soul leaves the body, it leaves from it leaves from the mouth, or it can leave from different holes. And then a top yogi leaves from the top of the head. Okay. It's not necessarily true for a Vaishnava, but the top of the head.
There's a picture in Bhagavad Gita like that.
So this is very, it's so out of the box, because we can think, well, if he's smoking tobacco, then it means he's a materialist. He doesn't have spiritual realization, and even the words he used, he had friends that were chatting with him. It didn't sound like they're chatting about the pastimes of Krishna or something. They were chatting, and then you can see, call me aside. Then he had like this mystic spiritual vision.
It's really out of the box.
Right, and then, very out of the box. And we can see, so he grew up in a non-Vaishnav town, eating buffaloes, goats, fish, things like that. And then after he got out of that, then he was into intellectualism, Western type intellectualism. That was the cool thing. And he wasn't into Vaishnavism. But then his grandfather just said, you're going to be a famous Vaishnava. And so it's very I think his grandfather was smoking tobacco. But we don't want to imitate, but we want to appreciate. Hare Krishna. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Sure, if you want to write that. Okay. Hare Krishna. Narayan is going to say something.
Okay. Hari Priya and her family are going to lead us in Ohe Vaishnav Thakur, bhajan by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Haribo.
So nice to see all of you. Thank you for this beautiful program.
Thank you.
Hey, Brielle.
Hare Krishna.
Haribo. Should I put the light?
That's your sister?
Yeah, that's my sister.
Hey! Hare Krishna.
We'll just leave it like that. So we're thinking to sing Ohe Vaishnava Thakur.
Nice,
Okay.
beautiful, beautiful. We do have some words here.
You need it? Anybody need a songbook?
Oh, I did.
Haripriya, would you like us to do a response or mute ourselves and you do the call and response yourself?
What do you think? I don't know. I've never done this before.
Response there, we can just mute ourselves and we'll sing along.
Yeah.
Just know that we're singing with you. But
Okay, sounds good.
all right.
Ohe Vaishnava Thakura, Zoyada Sagara, Vedase Karuna Gori. Ohe Vaishnava Thakura, Zoyada Sagara, Vedase Karuna Gori. Ohe Vaishnava Thakura, Dayara Sagara, Vedase Karuna Gori. Ohe Vaishnava Thakura, Dayara Sagara, Vedase Karuna Gori. Dhira Govinda Sadahara Maya Tara Charana Dori. Dhira Govinda Sadahara Maya Tamara Charana Dori. Dhira Govinda Sadahara Maya Tamara Charana Dori. Dhira Govinda Sadahara Maya Tamara Charana Dori. Translation. O Venerable Vaishnava, O Ocean of Mercy, be merciful to this servant of yours, and purify me with the shade of your lotus feet. Your lotus feet I humbly hold. By helping me conquer the 6 urges, and purifying me of the 6 faults, bestow upon your servant the 6 good qualities. O Master, please give me the 6 kinds of holy association. I have sat down here hoping to have your company. Alone, I do not find the strength to chant the holy name of Hari. Please be merciful and bless me with a drop of faith. Bestow upon me the great treasure of the holy name of Krishna. Krishna is yours, and you can give him to me, for such is your power. This wretch is simply running behind you, crying out, Krishna, Krishna. Chaya Veka Domi, Chaya Dosha Shodi, Chaya Guna Deho Dase. Chaya Veka Domi, Chaya Dosha Shodi, Chaya Guna Deho Dase. Jaya Vegadomi, Jaya Dosha Shoni, Jaya Gunade Kodase, Jaya Vegadomi, Jaya Dosha Shoni, Jaya Gunade Kodase. Jaya Satsanga, Devaya Mare, Kosachi Sangera Ashe. 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 Ekaki Amara, Nahi Paya Bala, Harinama Sankirtane. 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 Tumi Kripa Kari, Shraddha Bindu Diya, Deva Krishna Namadane. Tumi Kripa Kari, Shraddha Bindu Diya, Deva Krishna Namadane. Tumi Kripa Kari, Shraddha Bindu Diya, Deva Krishna Namadane. Tumi Kripa Kari, Shraddha Bindu Diya, Krishna Namadane. Krishna se tumhara, Krishna dite para, tumhara shakti ache. Krishna se tumhara, Krishna dite para, tumhara shakti ache. Krishna se tumhara, Krishna dite para, tumhara shakti ache. Krishna se tumhara, Krishna dite para, tumhara shakti ache. Amita Gangana, Krishna Krishna Bali, Daita Pache Pache. 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 Amita Gangana, Krishna Krishna Bali Naitava Pache Pache Oh Hey Vaishnava Thakura Daya Rasa Gara Vedase Karuna Kori Oh Hey Vaishnava Thakura Daya Rasa Gara Vedase Karuna Kori Oh Hey Vaishnava Thakura Daya Rasa Gara Vedase Karuna Kori Oh Hey Vaishnava Thakura Daya Rasa Gara Vedase Karuna Kori Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Oh Hey Vaishnava Thakura Daya Rasa Gara Vedase Karuna Kori Oh Hey Vaishnava Thakura Daya Rasa Gara Vedase Karuna Kori Oh Hey Vaishnava Thakura Daya Rasa Gara Vedase Karuna Kori Hare Vaishnava Thakura Daya Rasa Gara Vedase Karuna Kori Shri Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you.
Hare
Thank
Hare
you,
Krishna.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hi, Yvonne.
Oh.
Thank you.
Opportunity.
Very beautiful, very meditative.
Very beautiful.
Thank you, Akuya. Thank you, Asamrita.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah. We have program practically every day in the morning, starting 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. Same place.
And also Monday and Saturday nights, at least for June. Hare
Yes,
Krishna.
5 days a week in the morning. Hare Krishna. Have a beautiful retreat. Hare Priya.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your association.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Jai
Jai
Srila
Srila
Prabhupada.
Prabhupada.
Hare